Monopolies. A monopoly is a market containing a single seller. In economics, a monopoly or pure monopoly is a market with only one firm in it. That is, one firm is the industry. In other words, a single firm has 100% market share. In law, however, in the UK, a monopoly is when a firm has market share of 25% or more. Even in markets with more than one seller, firms have monopoly power if they can influence the price of a particular good on their own, that is, act as price makers. In a monopoly, the price isn't determined by the market, it's determined by the firm. Monopoly power may come about as a result of barriers to entry, that is, preventing new competition entering a market to compete away large profits. Advertising and product differentiation. A firm may be able to act as a price maker if consumers think of its products as more desirable than those produced by other firms, for example, because of a strong brand. Few competitors in the market. If a market is dominated by a small number of firms, these are likely to have some price making power. They'll also find it easier to differentiate their products. Finally, even though firms with monopoly power are price makers, consumers can still choose whether or not to buy their products, so demand will still depend on the price. As always, the higher the price, the lower the demand will be. A monopolist makes supernormal profits even in the long run. This diagram shows how a firm behaves in a monopoly market. Assume that the firm wants to maximise profits. Its level of output is where MC equals MR, shown by the red dot. If the firm produces a quantity of QM, the demand or AR curve shows the price that the firm can set as PM. At this output, the average cost of producing each unit is ACM. The difference between ACM and PM is the supernormal profit per unit. So the total supernormal profit is shown by the red area. In a monopoly market, the barriers to entry are total, so no new firms can enter the market, and this supernormal profit is not competed away. This means the situation remains as it is. That is, the long-run equilibrium position for a monopolist is supernormal profit. Monopolies aren't productively or allocatively efficient. The above diagram, so the one we've just looked at, showed that. Another look at it again. So the above diagram showed that MC isn't equal to AC at the long-run position for a monopoly, i.e. the firm isn't operating at the lowest point on the AC curve. This means that a monopoly isn't productively efficient. So there's productively efficient here, and the monopoly is below that level of output. The same diagram shows the price charged by the firm is greater than the marginal cost. This means that a monopoly market is not allocatively efficient. Producers are being over-rewarded for the products they are providing. Because of the restricted supply, the product will also be under-consumed. Consumers aren't getting as much of the product as they want. The red area shows how some of the consumer surplus that would have existed at the market equilibrium price of PC is transferred to the producer. There's also a deadweight welfare loss too. The grey area shows potential revenue that the producer isn't earning on the quantity QM to QC of the product that the consumers would have been prepared to pay for, but which isn't produced. So on this diagram, what I've done is showed you what happens with regards to price. So we can see that if a firm wants to, which it will, seek to maximise profits, the profit max point is noted in purple. Therefore, it's the highest price. we can see that for a monopoly to seek the productive or become productively efficient, it's going to lead to a fall in price from PM to PE. Finally, you can see that for the monopolies to become allocatively efficient, such as that found in perfectly competitive markets, it's going to have a real problem because it would have to allow the price to fall from PM to AE. Monopolies have further drawbacks. There's no need for a monopoly to innovate or respond to changing consumer preferences in order to make a profit, so they may become more complacent. Similarly, there's no need to increase efficiency, so X inefficiency can remain high. Consumer choice is restricted, since there is no alternative products. Finally, monopsonist power may also be used to exploit suppliers. I will explain monopsonist power in a moment. Natural monopolies have a lot of monopoly power. Some industries lead to a natural monopoly. This can mean they have a great deal of monopoly power. Industries where there are high fixed costs and or there are large economies of scale lead to natural monopolies. If there was more than one firm in the industry, then they would all have the same fixed costs. This would lead to a higher cost per customer than can be obtained by a single firm. In this case, a monopoly might be more efficient than having lots of firms competing. For example, the supply of water is a natural monopoly, as is railway lines. It makes no sense for competing firms to lay separate pipes or separate railway lines. A natural monopoly will also have continuous economies of scale, i.e., LRAC will fall as output increases, meaning MC is always below AC. A profit maximising natural monopoly will restrict output to where MC equals MR. That's at quantity M in this diagram. So you can see the here AC, I'll change the colour. You can see the continuous economies of scale. So that's going to go down. It won't reach zero, but it will be pretty close to that point. If you were to increase output up to a ridiculously high level, because you are spreading those high fixed costs on a wider range of output. You should also note that the marginal cost here is falling, okay? And it's always going to be below AC because it's dragging the average cost down. We can see here as well, in yellow, that the firm will restrict output to this level. So imagine if it's a railway line or a firm providing water, slightly concerning that they would just restrict the amount of tap water and train journeys available to consumers. Therefore, a government might decide to provide subsidies to the natural monopoly so that it can increase output to the point where average revenue equals supply. That is QS. So they could provide a subsidy and the production could move to this point here. One other thought here is that a government might be reluctant to break up a natural monopoly, as this could actually reduce efficiency. And we'll look at why that's the case now. One final thing to show, that's the price of the natural monopoly. Here, that's the price they're going to receive. But we can see with a subsidy provided for by the government, the price would fall dramatically. However, monopolies have some potential benefits. A monopolist's large size allows it to gain an advantage from economies of scale. If diseconomies of scale are avoided, this means it can keep average costs and perhaps prices low. A monopolist will provide more than any individual producer in a perfectly competitive market would. Second, the security a monopolist has in the market, as well as the supernormal profits, means it can take a long-term view and invest in developing and improving products for the future. This can lead to dynamic efficiency. Increased financial security also means that a monopolist can provide stable employment for its workers. Intellectual property rights, IPRs, allow a form of legal limited monopoly that can actually be in consumers' interests because they'll benefit from better quality, innovative products. There are various types of IPRs, such as copyright and patents. These allow a firm exclusive use of their innovative ideas. That is, no one else is allowed to use them for a limited time. During this time, supernormal profits may be possible, but this is seen as the reward for innovation and creativity. Without the protection of IPRs, firms would have little incentive to risk their resources investing in innovative products or processes. Other firms would simply be able to copy those ideas and immediately start to compete away any supernormal profits. IPRs are particularly important in the creative industries, for example, music, video games, and television. A monopsony is a market with a single buyer. A monopsony is a situation when a single buyer dominates a market. A monopsonist can act as a price maker and drive down prices. For example, supermarkets are sometimes accused of acting as monopsonists when buying from their suppliers. Some people claim supermarkets unfairly use their market power to force suppliers to sell their products at a price that means those suppliers make a loss. For example, supermarkets and dairy farmers. This could be seen as a monopsonist exploiting its suppliers, but it could be in the interest of consumers if the supermarket pass on those low prices by charging low prices to consumers. And arguably this has been the case with milk in the UK. If a firm is the single buyer of labour in the market, it can exploit its power and also lower the wages of its employees.